Welcome in, welcome in. We're getting started here. Just a moment. I'm going to quickly give a lesson on how I approach recording. Recording. How I approach soloing and improvising. Must have had recording on the brain. But today we're going to be talking about how to solo, how to sound musical, how to unlock the fretboard. If that sounds interesting to you, stick around. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, give me a follow on all the platforms. So let's go here. I'm gonna shut down this mixer here because I think it's giving us a little buzz, a little buzzing. All right. Welcome in, welcome in. Rising with Dawn. How are you? Good to see you. Mari, good to see you. Why must there be an echo? I have no other audio, so hold on. Thank you for calling that out. What could be causing that? Check. What about now? Do you hear me at all? Interesting. Let me see if I can figure that out. I'm glad you mentioned it. Yep, I think I found the culprit. Let's go ahead and... Yep. You know what? That was the cause of the buzzing as well. I had this buzzing sound. I'm sure it should be resolved now. Let me see here. Oh snap. I'm still hearing it. And I'm doubled. Okay. Check. There's a lot going on here. Why? Check. What in the actual factual is going on here? Well, we're here today talking about how I deal with echoes. And on this day, I proudly present this ruler. I've had this ruler since I was a kid. And now it's my microphone. Oh boy. On a real note, though, I need to figure out why this is happening. Check. Oh, I'm sure it's doing it there because I can hear it in my headphones. So I'm assuming it's because I have delay on here. Check. Okay. I don't understand this. Because I have turned off any possible source. Oh, wait a minute. I turned it off on the wrong track. Check. Okay. It's still got a weird echo, though. I eliminated the delay. However, are you hearing like a spacey sound, or does it sound clean? Okay. It doesn't sound clean in my headphones, though. Check. Check. That's sounding a little better. This ruler, it rocks. There's a buzz. That might be legit in the room. I'm still getting an echo in my headphones. Let me turn that down. Let me mute this. That's muted. Bear with me here. Yeah, I want to say mine's been, we probably got it at the same time, is my guess. Welcome in, user. Just troubleshooting some audio issues real quick. I've got a little echo going on in my headphone, and then we're going to jump into this. Check, check. One moment, please. Standing by. Also, your video's cut off on YouTube. What do you mean cut off? Okay. This live's going very well so far. I see myself perfectly centered on my TikTok feed right now. Okay, so then if I switch to this shot, I should be in the corner, almost cut off, which is what you should be seeing. That's fine as long as you can see the fretboard. Oh, I see. The mobile preview is cutting off a little bit. Okay, let me shrink it down some more. Okay. Welcome in, everybody, for the YouTube video replay. This is probably where I'll edit the video to start. Today, I wanted to talk about how I approach soloing, improvising, and how I learned the fretboard, and what I think is the fastest, quickest, most surefire, and simplest way to memorize the fretboard so you can solo anywhere on it in any key and still sound musical. So what I have up on the screen now is the fretboard. The first string up top would be the high E, then B, G, D, A, E would be the low string. The frets are along the side, numbered 3, 5, 7, 9, and 12. And this is only the notes rather in the key of C. And this is typically where I begin with any student, is learning the key of C first, and understanding the shapes and patterns of how all the modes are connected. And then we can transpose that to other keys whenever you know, whenever we get to the point where we've memorized how the scales interlock together. So on the screen I have here a diagram that I can mark up so I can demonstrate how I approach the fretboard. So I'm going to do that here. And we're going to begin with looking at the notes. Obviously, we start with the names of the strings, which is the first note on every string. And since this is a short fretboard, it's only 12 frets, it doesn't go beyond that. I do have another diagram that shows a lot more of the fretboard. But just to begin with, we're going to start by showing just this 12 frets. And we're in the key of C, but we're not necessarily going to start on the key of C. The one thing I don't like is it's not showing my cursor. So let me go in and see if I can change that setting real quick. Capture cursor is enabled. Oh, there we go. All right, I got it. It's working now. I got too many windows open here. Okay. Okay, cursor is seen. We're going to start at the very first low note on the standard guitar tuning, which is in low E, and this would be the Phrygian mode in the key of C. But the names of the modes really isn't important today. What matters most is that we recognize the shapes and patterns and how they repeat. So what I like to do is I learn all of the modes 3 notes per string. And this allows you to cover more of the fretboard, and it allows you to break basically the fretboard up into 3 separate sections or groups of 2 strings each. So you have A and E being the first group. In fact, I'll just mark this up. You have A and E being the first group. Next set of strings is D and G. I can do better than that with a circle. No, I can't. The last 2 sets are the high E and the B string. Okay, so if we think of it this way, we're going to break this guitar into 3 separate sections, 2 sets of strings each. And everything we learn in the first group is just going to repeat in these next 2 groups. And this is going to make it very easy to visualize and memorize. And for anyone that's watching here, don't worry about taking notes. This video replay will be available on my YouTube channel at Mish Guitar. Just click on the lives and it will be out there. So we're going to start with the Phrygian mode, even though that is technically the 3rd degree of the major scale, C, D, E. We're going to start there because that's the low E string. And it really doesn't matter where we start. So in this group, or this fretboard diagram, all of the notes you see that are highlighted and labeled are the notes in the key of C. Anything that is a white circle would be a sharp or a flat note that we would not want to play in the key of C. So we can ignore those. So when I highlight some of these notes, the only ones I care about are the ones that actually have a note value that's there. So let's go ahead and grab a highlighter. I'm going to highlight the Phrygian mode and how I visualize it and how I play it. It's good to start with the Phrygian mode too, in my opinion, because it's the most versatile position. It's the most natural position for soloing, in my opinion. So let's jump in. E, F, G. So that would be the open low E. We play F and G. Okay, so that's the first 3 notes of the Phrygian mode, E, F, G. Easy enough. The next 3 notes are going to be A, B, C. A, B, C. Okay, perfect. So one thing we're going to recognize very quickly is, or maybe not so quickly, is E, F, G, A, B, C repeats itself right here. The same exact pattern. E, F, G, A, B, C. Interesting. Forms like two little triangles, or sorry, I failed geometry apparently. Two little rectangles. Okay, so if you visualize, you've got this rectangle and this rectangle, and any note that is labeled within this rectangle, we're going to play from low to high. So we have E, F, G, A, B, C. Now we're going to skip the note that would connect it, which would be this D here, just so we can visualize how these notes repeat. So the next set, we see E, F, G, A, B, C. We're going to jump up here, and we see it repeats again. This time it repeats 4 frets up for the B string. However, once you get there, the pattern is identical. We have E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay. So this is essentially the Phrygian mode minus the D note. Now, if you can visualize this, you can play E, F, G, A, B, C, and you already know the pattern of the next set of strings. E, F, G, A, B, C, E, F, G, A, B, C. And we've now just covered with one mode 8 frets of the fretboard. We've gone all the way up to the fret 8 right here, starting at 0. So with this one mode, we've unlocked 8 frets of the fretboard, just with this one pattern. Now, to connect these, we could just extend this line from C to D, from C to D here, from C to D here. And that's how you connect these in one continuous scale. So you'd go E, F, G, A, B, C, and that would be your first, second, and pinky. You know, first, second, fourth finger, first, third, fourth, and then when we get up here, we slide up to the D with our pinky. And then we're perfectly in position to repeat the pattern. E, F, G, A, B, C, slide your pinky up to D, E, F, G, A, B, C, slide up to D. And if you want to get through a full 3 octaves, you slide up the final D to E, and we've now just covered all of the fretboard with one mode, one pattern, one rectangle that repeats 3 times. Now we can do this with any scale. So this is obviously the Phrygian mode, if you know your modes. It is the third degree of the major scale, starting on the E note. But it doesn't really matter if you understand that. As long as you can see this shape, you see the notes that are contained within this shape. And if you're playing a solo, for example, or improvising, you get to use all of these notes that are in red to make a solo. And that's just one scale. That's one mode within the major scale. So if you learn just this and nothing else, you'd be pretty well off. Now, of course, there's the standard shapes, which I also recommend, which the standard shapes will fill in these other gaps here. So in your mind, you'll kind of recognize how these work. However, the cool trick is that these all overlap. So instead of erasing all of the red markup I already did here, I will go back a little bit just so we can get back to this basic shape. And I want to show you the next mode. We're going to skip up to the 3rd fret. Just for the sake of illustration, we can start anywhere. And it's always going to be 6 notes, 6 notes, 6 notes. So each grouping is going to contain 6 notes. It's going to create a shape. So let's choose a different color this time. We're going to choose blue, just so it contrasts a little bit. Now we're going to start on G. If we're starting on G in the key of C, this would be the Mixolydian mode. The Mixolydian terminology is not important. What is important is the shape. So we're going to go G, A, B, and then we're going to go C, D, E. We're going to repeat this pattern. As we'll see, the A again appears right here. or sorry, the G. G appears right here, an octave up. G, A, B, C, D, E. We're going to find that G again right here. G, A, B, C, D, E. And again, we can draw little lines to indicate that these are nice little rectangles that we can stay in. So as you can see, this pattern just repeats perfectly 3 times on the fretboard. This one repeats a whole step up from here, and this one repeats 1.5 steps up. But once you start that pattern, it is the same. And just like in the previous example, if you take the last note of each one of these and extend it, slide up, then we've completed the scale with all the notes. And again, just with this one scale, we cover 12 frets of the fretboard practically. So all you really need to memorize is a couple basic shapes if you want to. Even just one will be more than enough to create really interesting solos with, because I think a lot of guitar players think in a linear fashion, straight lines up and down. However, once you get a little more advanced, you get comfortable with these patterns, you'll be able to create different shapes or stuff like this, where you go make triads like that. And you see, oh, that triad repeats again. Oh, that triad repeats again. Well, if you group those together and you do different picking patterns and different orders, you can start to create really interesting melodies and patterns. So let's go ahead, back off with the highlighting for a minute. And we are going to do it again, starting now on A. Now this would be the relative minor in the key of C, starting on A. It would be the A minor scale, also known as the Aeolian mode. And I'm going to highlight this one. I've already got yellow up, so I'll just stick with yellow here. We've got A, B, C, D, E, F. Sorry, I learned the alphabet today. You'll see that one whole step up, this little box repeats itself, right? A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, we've got that same box again. So basically we've just learned this one box, but now we can copy and paste it wherever we want. Wherever that first A is, we just copy that box, and boom, we've got this next piece of the fretboard figured out. So where's that A begin again? Now when you get to the B, it's always a step and a half instead of one step up. But once you get there, the shape's going to be the same. A, B, C. This would be a C right here. D, E, F. This would be an F right here. So that would take us through the whole pattern. Our 3 boxes would be right there. And again, to connect these patterns, all we do is we take our pinky that lands on this last note of the box and we slide it up to the next note in the scale, which would be a G in this case. So once we slide up to that G, the scale completely repeats itself. So once you get to the end of this F, we slide up to G, and so on. And then again, we've just covered almost 12 frets, or 12 frets of the fretboard. If we slide up just one more note, we would be up to the A. And since we're getting a little high up, I'm going to switch to the other fretboard diagram, just because it does cover more of the fretboard. That way I can show you what that'll look like if we go all the way up. One moment please while I open this. Open with photos, that way I can edit. Okay. if I can find it here. There we go. Like I said, I've got a few too many things open here. So let's go ahead, try to recenter that. Okay, so this fretboard goes all the way up to the 15th fret. However, it's a little different in that the notes in between are shown here. So any of the notes that are in black are not in the key of C. So as we highlight these shapes on this fretboard, we're going to ignore any note that is black and only play the notes that are colored in. So again, we were on the A minor scale, so I'm going to pick up there. Hopefully that's not too blurry. Okay, I'm gonna grab red again just because it's a little easier to see. Okay, so starting on A minor, now the color is a little different on this one, but the concept is exactly the same. We're gonna start on A. We're gonna go A, B, C, D, E, F. We're gonna see that creates a nice little rectangle. And we're going to see that it repeats that shape again, A, B, C, D, E, F. Okay, so we've learned this one box here, and now we've already know this box because it's just going to repeat itself. And then again, we're going to look for that A again here, A, B, C, D, E, F. Come on. So now we have our 3 boxes. And the only thing we would need to do to connect those to be the full scale is we would slide our pinky up to that next note, which would be a G. And there's our Aeolian mode. In case you're curious. Yeah, I should probably get one of those little stylus tools instead of trying to write with the mouse. Okay. Now that we have that logic down, we can apply that anywhere we want to start. And we don't really necessarily have to know that it's called an Aeolian mode. All we have to know that if we're in the key of C and we start anywhere, we can create a rectangle. Let's say we're going to start on a B, which would be a Locrian mode within the key of C. Again, you don't really need to know that terminology to be effective at improvising and soloing. But mastering and learning these shapes, memorizing these shapes and patterns is, I think, critical. So starting on B, we could go B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, B again repeats up here. B, C, D, E, F, G. And again, to repeat again up here, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay, so there are our 3 boxes, our 3 rectangles. So we've then just divided the guitar again into 3 different sections here. Each section containing 2 groupings of strings. So to connect these 3 boxes, the connecting note would be an A here. We would slide our pinky up, and then we'd be in the position to play this next box. We'd slide our pinky up to this A here, play this next box, and so on. Up here, if the fretboard continued, we could slide from 15 up to 17, which would be the A on the next string there as well. So very quickly, we can unlock the fretboard with this logic. And once we understand these patterns and how they relate to each other, we can apply that to any key. If we know the A minor box starts in the key of D would be a B minor, we just shift everything over. So if we had wanted to, we could have displayed more of the scale here all on one chart, so you can see how they do actually overlay with each other. Starting on the Phrygian again, E, F, G, A, B, C, E, F, G, A, B, C, E, F, G, A, B, C. So then we have our 3 sets of Phrygian boxes. And again, to connect those, we would just slide up to the D, be in position to play our next set. Slide up to the D here, slide up to the D here. Now, as you can see, we just learned 2 of the modes out of all 7, and yet we covered, I don't know, at least 80% of the fretboard, if not more, just with these 2 shapes, probably more like 90% of the fretboard. So you don't necessarily have to memorize every shape. So I'm not really too concerned with the names of the modes as long as you know these shapes. And that's why, going back to the other fretboard, the key of C is usually where I begin. I can't find it. Where'd you go? There you go. My key of C fretboard. Okay. And this is why I begin with the key of C, because it's much simpler. And all you really need to know is the alphabet, and you just need to know that there is a half step between E and F and B and C, and everything else has a whole step. So as long as you know those 2 pieces of information, that E and F in the key of C is always, you're only 1 fret apart, and B and C is only 1 fret apart. Every other note's 2 frets apart. So anywhere you start on the fretboard, any open string you start on, you'll know that you have to put a fret between the notes, except for B and C and E and F. So given that, how I memorized the fretboard early on was I would just draw out 6 strings, I would draw out the 12 frets, and I would just write in the notes. Obviously it's very easy, you're just following the alphabet, going up each string. However, when you write in the notes and you look at the chart, it kind of burns into your brain. It helps you memorize it. And so this is kind of that same exact exercise where we could just do this and visualize how we would go up the fretboard. And again, if we want to overlap these, we add, so that's just, again, two of the modes. Gets us 90%. You know, we can add 1 more and fill in the rest. But we don't really even need to know all 7 modes. You just need to know maybe 3 of them. The whole fretboard figured out. So again, we'll go up to the G here, which would be a Mixolydian mode. And we'll just fit it in here to show how these would interconnect. So your Mixolydian is G, A, B, C, D, E, G, A, B, C, D, E, and again we see our nice set of 3 boxes that represent all but 1 note. And to get to that extra note, we just slide up with our pinky, and then we're in the next position. So as you can see, this began where the Phrygian left off, and we overlapped with the next scale, which would have been the A minor, or Aeolian. Now, if you wanted to, you could learn the Phrygian, the Mixolydian, and then now I obviously recommend learning the major scale, but if you just learn those three shapes, just to illustrate real quick, we'll end up going off the chart here, but if we were to learn Locrian, which would be the shape starting on B, we could properly overlap this, B, C, D, E, F, G. Now we can't really show much of the next one, it would be going off this fretboard up here. But we can see that we've learned Phrygian, Mixolydian, Locrian, and we've just covered essentially the whole fretboard up here. So learning the fretboard is intimidating, but it doesn't have to be. If you break it down into groups of three sets, you've got E and D, D and G, B and E. So if you were to just isolate this first set and you just memorize the shapes going up, E, F, G, A, B, C, and so on, you would have the whole fretboard memorized, because they just in a diagonal fashion. We'll clean this up a little bit just so we can get back to a nice clean version to show you what I mean. I'll do another line like this. It's always going to be like this. E, F, or E, E, E. The notes always move diagonally up like this. Now my lines are terrible. I recognize that. I could have used I think a highlighter line. That probably would have been better. But you get the idea. You can very quickly unlock the fretboard just by identifying how these repeat. Knowing that there's only ever 7 notes, so that we know that's the whole scale right there. This little partial trapezoid shape is the entire scale before it repeats. So you can do that with every scale, essentially creating 3 separate octaves of the scale, playing 3 notes per string, and then you slide up to this 4th one, which would be connecting you to the next pattern. So I'm definitely going to be doing a proper video on this topic of how to map out the fretboard in any key. And just for demonstration, I will do a quick solo in the key of B minor, just demonstrating that you can apply this logic to any key you want. So why don't I switch here real quick? I'll go to full screen. And I'll play a little outro music demonstration for you. If you guys enjoyed this lesson, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Follow me on all the other platforms. For a replay, you can always check my lives, as all my live replays are posted. And I usually do get around to editing them and adding chapter markers when I can. So look out for that. And I'll say goodbye now, because I'm just going to play a little few riffs for you, demonstrate some improvisation and some soloing, and then I'm going to say goodbye, because I've got to jump in my lesson here. Got a guitar lesson starting. So I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you for joining, and stick around here for a few minutes to hear some live looping with my Stratocaster for a change, not the acoustic. Here we go. that's it for me today. Carol, good to see you. Don, as always. All right, shoving off for today. Thank you so much. Catch you on the next one, everybody. Signing off.